the massive border crisis happening right now at our southern border in just a few moments. But first, we also have one of our favorite guests to come on, Jacqueline Newman. She's out of New York City, and she's a New York City-based divorce lawyer and experienced matrimonial law expert, managing partner of a top-tier Fifth Avenue Manhattan law firm. And she does focus exclusively on divorce and prenups, for high net worth people contemplating marriage, to high conflict matrimonial litigation. I guess all that stuff can get really sticky. And she also lectures and does legal education, instructing, and teaches meditation too and collaborative law as alternatives to lengthy courtroom brawls. So it sounds like she tries to do a lot for her clients and the people who come to her. Jacqueline, welcome back to America Trends.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good to see you. So we're talking today about, first we're going to talk about just getting through divorce in general. You know, we talked to you a few months back, and you know, a segment like this you might sort of tune out. I feel like when it comes to divorce, it's like buying a house. Unless you do it, it's not an expertise you really need to have, or you can really figure out this is the way it is. So when we have people like you come on now and then, it's really good. And I know we're talking about middle class versus rich people's divorce, as they say. But also just getting through it for anyone in general, because it's a very complicated and profoundly sad time. So we appreciate you and the books that you've written. So there are 5 ways, you say, that divorces among the rich do differ from, say, middle class.
So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different ways that it differs. I mean, first of all, and probably the most important way, is that there's not a lot of law that really applies to the wealthy, shall we say, or the high net worth.
How wealthy are we talking, Jacqueline?
You know, it really depends. I mean, you know, the cases that I'm speaking of, probably, I would say net worths of anywhere from 5 million to 400 million. Like, that's basically kind of the space that I'm pretty much talking about. Because what happens is that a lot of the statutes and a lot of the laws that currently exist, at least specifically in New York, are really geared more toward the middle class. So for an example, child support. The child support formulas that exist right now in New York are capped at $48,000 of combined parental income. So if you earn in excess of that, which most of people in New York City, or at least I could say my clients generally do, then the laws don't really apply. The formulas don't make sense. So you're in a situation where the courts are then going to do a lifestyle analysis to see what's appropriate for a child support award when dealing with children. So in a situation like that, again, it's one of those things where the law doesn't help. It's a lot of discretion for the courts, and it really makes divorce a little bit more messy and a little bit more questionable when you're dealing with a high net worth in regards to child support. So
for those tricky things, because New York City, it's a good place for you to be based, I guess, because if you live in New York City, Manhattan, you know, you've probably little ways up on the socioeconomic scale, on the economic scale anyway, and so what are some of the ramifications? What are some of the things that you need to advise people on? Like if you have someone upper class Manhattan right now, what sort of things do you advise them on to be wary of and to be keeping track of right now if they're considering divorce?
Well, really, I mean, some of the things that you want to pay attention to have to do with, you know, your assets, for an example. So one of the things that also is an issue when you're dealing with the high net worth, and something that people want to consider, is that, you know, depending on, again, what the status is. So for an example, if you have somebody who's in the public eye due to their worth, or due to just maybe they're an actress or whatever it is, another level of issue that comes up is that they care a lot what the public thinks. And so what the fear you have is that somebody is going to try the case in the media. So, you know, again, it's something that you may have situations where somebody says, you know, if you don't do what I want to do, I'm going to leak your story to page 6 of the Post or something like that. And that's a whole nother layer of something you need to think about. You need to think about how this is going to play out in the public. And a lot of times, you know, the stuff that gets leaked to the media isn't accurate. But again, you want to keep things really quiet, and you want to keep things, you know, inside, because if ultimately they leak out in any way, it could have a real impact on your career.
Is there a way, I guess this is more for middle class, is there a way for people to avoid huge lawyer fees? Like, how well do we need to get along with the spouse we're divorcing to have it not be just crazy fees for years and in the courts for months or years, et cetera? Any advice on that?
Absolutely. There are ways that you can, minimize your legal fees. So, depending on what process choice you choose to go through to get divorced, one option is mediation. And if you do mediation, you're working with one person who's a mediator. A lot of times the people will have attorneys on the outside, but more often than not, they'll work with one person. I mean, it's a self-selecting process, so it really is only for certain people if you feel like you can be honest and you feel like you can really both have, the same goal of trying to reach a resolution. But if you can do that, it's definitely a less expensive way to go than litigation. Not to mention the fact it's, much increases the odds that you're going to be walking your child down the aisle one day.
I suppose it does. The more complex your finances, property, debt is, I suppose some of the things that you pay attention, finances, debt, children, and you and I have even talked in the past about people trying to get custody of the pets.
Right. No, that does come up. More and more people are really very, very protective of their furry children. And so we've done, custody agreements. We've done, we've had people that have been litigating about that. Very often the resolution is that the pet would follow the children. So when you're dealing with any kind of parenting arrangement, then if the children are with the parents, let's say the father on Monday and Wednesday and the mother on Thursday and Friday, a situation like that, then, sometimes the pet will just kind of bounce back and forth with the kids.
Anything to add to this topic before there's the pet, just being yanked both ways, poor thing. Divorce late in life, how to navigate finding your identity without a partner. That can be a very scary thing, but do you want to add anything, any points that I might have missed before we move on, Jacqueline?
No, I think you basically covered it, but it really can. What they call the gray divorce, it is a very difficult thing. And, people think that, especially when you're married for 20, 30 years, you figure you're going to, die next to this person. And then when somebody else is really ready to start over and wants to end the relationship, it could be absolutely devastating. And
again, if you can check out Jacqueline Newman at nycdivorcelawyer.com. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And you have books. I think if I remember, you wrote one for the males and for the females on how to, do you really want to do this? And here are some of the things that can help you both. But I've got about 50 seconds. If you could tell me just your best advice and for people that are saying goodbye and navigating, by themselves. Sometimes that's the hardest thing is leaving that unit and going off by yourself.
Yeah. So one of the things that I would really recommend to people is that, and I know this is easier said than done, but keeping it amicable. I mean, really, the idea that you're going to sit and spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees to just sit and battle your spouse, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Like I say to clients all the time, would you rather pay for your kids' college or mine?
That's exactly right. nycdivorcelawyer.com. That's what I love about you, because you are the person who would be there, for all those years helping mitigate all this and litigate it. But you do want to help people get through it smoothly and without paying so many expenses. So, Jacqueline, can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your expertise.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you next time. We're going to be right back. You can find her online, once again, New York City Divorce Lawyer. And we're going to be back with Jason Piccolo talking about what he saw firsthand at our southern border.
My son.